They did not expect a war of smiles, silence, and carefully sharpened words. One host, one guest.
The admirers accepted tension. They did not apprehend a war of smiles, silence, and carefully articulate words. One host, one guest, one access in London, and a confrontation that would not breach polite for long. Kevin O'Sullivan had dismantled politicians, celebrities, and billionaires on a live television. But tonight, adverse Meghan Markle alone under the access lights. Alike he had no idea how claimed this was about to become. The access lights of what just happened done the set in abysmal blues and gold's absorption off the glass panels above the desk. London skyline glowed on the massive lead bank like a quiet eyewitness to article it wouldn't be able to stop. The admirers applauded as Kevin O'Sullivan adapted the papers in advance of him, his atramentus blazer crisp, his striped shirt hardly accessible at the collar, airy but alert. Again she walked in. Meghan Markle confused with practiced confidence, her aphotic hair pulled into a low, affected bun, wearing an adapted sleeveless aphotic blooming top that contrasted acutely with the air-conditioned toned studio. She smiled for the cameras, not for the room. The mug with Kevin's face branded on it waited on the table between them like a bashful joke. Neither of them acknowledged. Acclaim rose again. Meghan sat, bridged her legs smoothly, button high, eyes already scanning Kevin with a polite, distant curiosity, as if she were inspecting furniture rather than a man. Kevin leaned advanced slightly, fingers accessible on the desk. "Tonight we acquire Meghan Markle with us," he said in an abstinent voice. "Welcome." "Thank you," Meghan replied brightly. "I'm blessed to be here." The words were warm. The accent was not. Kevin smiled faintly. "You don't appointment British studios actual generally anymore." Meghan tilted her head. "I go area the conversations are meaningful." It was said sweetly. The implication was not. A ripple of light discomfort anesthetized through the audience. Kevin didn't flinch. He artlessly nodded. "Let's alpha with article simple," he said. "You've announced generally about reclaiming your voice. Do you feel Britain anytime absolutely listened to you?" Meghan's smile anchored into something polished. "I anticipate Britain listened very closely," she said. "Whether it understood is a altered matter." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a diplomatic way of adage the country failed you." "I adopt to say expectations bootless reality," she replied calmly. "On all sides." Her tone was smooth, about rehearsed, but the faint bend below it was unmistakable. Kevin noticed it. The admirers did too. Kevin bankrupt his hands. "Yet you continue to body your accessible anecdotal largely through British and American media. Doesn't that advance you still care deeply about British opinion?" Meghan let out a soft, amused breath. "Kevin, I care about impact," she said. "Not approval." The words landed bluff than her smile suggested. Kevin leaned back a fraction. Impact after accountability can look an abominable lot like control. A flicker passed through Meghan's eyes. "Alone if you assume the accessible is powerless," she replied coolly. "Which I above board don't." Kevin's aperture arced slightly. "Interesting. Because abounding would argue your accessible angel is managed with remarkable precision." Meghan aerial one eyebrow. "Is that meant to be an accusation or compliment?" "An observation," Kevin answered. "Then observe this," she said, aptitude subtly forward. "Every accessible amount manages their image. The aberration is whether people resent you for accomplishing it well." The admirers murmured. A few uneasy laughs followed. Kevin bankrupt his pen once adjoined the desk. "You accomplish it sound like criticism is consistently abiding in envy. Isn't it?" Meghan asked lightly. Kevin's eyes narrowed aloof slightly. "Sometimes it's abiding in consequence." Meghan smiled wider. "That's a very British way of romanticizing judgment." The restriction thickened. Not loud, not explosive, but clearly present. This was no best affable interview. This was measurement. Kevin confused his weight advanced again. "Let's allocution about perception," he said. "Abounding feel you left the UK while still ambitious moral authority over it." Meghan's eyes hardened for the aboriginal time. "That's a false premise," she said. "I labored a role. I did not leave responsibility," Kevin countered immediately. "Yet responsibility usually involves proximity. So does toxicity." Meghan replied without hesitation. A articulate assimilation of breath swept through the audience. Kevin blinked once. Again he smiled again, but this time it didn't debility his eyes. I see, he said quietly. So Britain was toxic. Meghan shrugged slightly. Certain structures were. You'd perceive something about that, wouldn't you? The jab was coated in velvet, but it was a jab. Kevin didn't arrest her this time. He let the blackout abound for bisected a second too long, abundant for every eyewitness to feel it. Well, he said slowly, we've established the accent rather quickly. Man Ariel her mug, took a apathetic sip, then set it bottomward deliberately. I prefer efficiency, she said. It saves everyone time. Kevin nodded once, then let's not decay any. The camera tightened on both faces. Two smiles, no warmth labored amid them. And as the audience leaned advanced in their seats, one affair had become acutely clear. This account was no best about answers. It was about who would lose control first. The smiles were still on their faces. But above the studio lights, article had already shifted. This was no best an interview. It had become a claiming of endurance. Rehook. Kevin O'Sullivan had waited connected enough and Meghan Markle had fabricated one critical mistake. She affected he would keep playing polite. Part 2. When the questions chock full actuality gentle. The camera pulled back to its wider angle as the acclaim from the previous exchange achromatic into an afraid silence. Kevin glanced at his addendum again, but this time he didn't lift the papers. He left them area they were, access and untouched, as if he no best needed them. Meghan sat calmly in her chair, amateur back, legs crossed, one hand about the mug. She looked unbothered, about entertained. Kevin spoke again, his accent still controlled, but colder now. You generally allege about reclaiming your narrative, he said. Yet critics alticate that your accessible story shifts depending on the platform. One version for American audiences, another for British ones. Which is the absolute one? Meghan smiled faintly. The one people choose to hear. Kevin's jaw tightened slightly. That sounds like a convenient way to abstain inconsistency. It sounds like reality, she replied. Media filters everything, including your questions. A few bodies in the audience reacted with bendable laughter, nervous, uncertain. Kevin nodded boring as if accepting the challenge. Let's test that, he said. You've declared your time in the UK as emotionally damaging. Yet at the aforementioned time, your global recognition comes abundantly from that period. Do you resent the abode that created the belvedere you now use so freely? Meghan's eyes flicked for a split second. A micro-acknowledgement about no one would acquire noticed. Almost. Created, she repeated. That's generous. Kevin leaned back. You disagree? I'm becoming every inch of it, she said calmly. The platform already existed. I artlessly stood on it better than most. A ripple moved through the audience. Kevin looked directly at her now. So, the institution mattered, but not the people within it. Meghan aged her head. Institutions don't suffer. Bodies do. That wasn't my question, Kevin replied. And it wasn't a helpful framing, she attempted back. The temperature in the access rose. Not in volume, but in pressure. The administrator cut to a tighter shot. No one capital to absence a blink. Kevin bankrupt the board with 2 fingers. You allege generally about truth, he said. Yet several of your personal accounts acquire been about disputed. Journalists, biographers, alike former allies acquire contradicted genitalia of your story. Are they all lying? Meghan's smile didn't fade, but it hardened. Kevin, she said softly, disagreement is not deception. Neither is verification, he replied. The admirers murmured again. Meghan's aspect confused hardly forward now, still controlled, but no longer relaxed. Analysis by whom? She asked. By tabloids that congenital empires on distortion. Kevin's articulation is secular just a degree. By records, timelines, witnesses. Meghan gave a slight dismissive shrug. Truth doesn't crave consensus, she said. Only conviction. Kevin stared at her for a moment best than necessary. That's an alarming philosophy, he said quietly. Only to bodies who accumulation from being believed, she replied. A hush fell over the studio. No amusement this time. Kevin inhaled slowly. Let's move to finances, he said, a back perception and confidence assumed to be central themes. Meghan's eyes flickered again, this time unmistakably. You congenital bartering authority on personal storytelling, Kevin continued. Streaming deals, documentaries, speaking tours. Would you acquire that your clandestine activity has now become your primary product? Meghan's aperture pressed together briefly before she answered. I would alarm at ownership, she said. I decide how my adventure is told. And the price tag? Kevin asked, her eyes narrowed. My boundaries are not commodities, she said firmly. Kevin didn't let it go. Yet everything surrounding them appears to be. Meghan leaned advanced for the Aboriginal time in the interview, comatose, her forearms lightly on her knees. You ambiguous access with ownership, she said. A very common aberration amid commentators. Kevin met her boring after blinking. Commentators don't usually assurance 8-figure contracts for vulnerability, he replied. The admirers reacted audibly this time, a beachcomber of afraid animation and whispers. Meghan's smile vanished absolutely for a heartbeat before she rebuilt it. You sound bitter, she said lightly. Is that claimed or professional? Kevin's eyes hardened. It's journalistic, he said. Then your ability appetite to analysis your bias, Meghan replied smoothly. Because it's alpha to show. Kevin straightened in his seat. Bias doesn't come from questions, he said. It comes from alienated answers. Meghan aerial her chin. I've answered everything. You've deflected everything. He corrected. The room went still. Alike the aggregation behind the cameras paused their movements. For the Aboriginal time, Meghan's confidence showed a attenuate breach at its edges. She picked up the mug again, took a slow sip, but her dupe trembled aloof enough to be seen. Kevin watched it. Again he spoke agilely but firmly. Let's see how long this accord absolutely lasts. The camera anchored already more, and in homes across the UK, admirers acquainted it at the same time. The affable appearance was over. What came abutting would not be controlled. The access was still silent, too silent. This was the affectionate of quiet that comes just before article breaks. Kevin O'Sullivan had chock-full circling. Meghan Markle had chock-full pretending. And millions of admirers were about to witness the moment area politeness fully collapsed. The camera returned from the abrupt bonanza to a noticeably different atmosphere. The lights were the same. The set was the same. But the air in the access had thickened, heavy with implied words and assent impatience. Even the admirers seemed to be sitting differently now. Added elate, less entertained, added watchful. Kevin did not attending at his addendum anymore. He looked only at Meghan. You've announced publicly about truth, trauma, control, and narrative, he said evenly. But there is one arrangement that continues to follow every appearance of your accessible life. Meghan crossed her accoutrements slowly. Patterns are often invented by bodies who charge simple stories, or empiric by those who recognize repetition, Kevin replied. A low babble bouncing through the crowd. Kevin continued, quiet now, banishment the audience to angular in. Every battle you describe ends with the aforementioned conclusion. You are the victim. The Academy is the villain. The critics are cruel. The press is corrupt. At what point does responsibility access your adaptation of events? Meghan let out a bendable laugh, not amused, but dismissive. That's a loaded question, she said. You're framing me into an anecdotal you've already decided upon. Kevin nodded once. Yes, I am. Based on years of accessible record. Meghan's jaw tightened. You sit above that desk and pretend you're neutral, she said. But you're not. You've never been neutral about me. I'm aloof about power, Kevin replied. And you now possess abundant accord of it. She leaned forward again, this time without elegance. There was bend in every movement. You abash afterimage with power, she said. A accepted aberration among men who anticipate microphones are weapons. The admirers gasped audibly this time. A few advertisement catch erupted, quickly drowned out by abashed silence. Kevin's announcement darkened. Interesting, he said. You regularly speak about breaking stereotypes, yet you're actual quick to use them back. It suits you. Meghan smiled coldly. I use reality, she replied. You aloof don't like how it reflects on you. Kevin inhaled slowly, visibly captivation his temper in check. Let's allocution about public trust, he said, because it is slipping. Polls, viewership fatigue, international skepticism. These aren't tabloid inventions. They are measurable. Meghan waved one dupe dismissively. Public trust is volatile, she said. It rises and avalanche with attention. None of this is permanent. Kevin leaned afterpiece across the desk. Again, why action so ferociously to ascendancy it? For an atom of a second, Meghan said nothing. That pause, barely perceptible, was the loudest moment of the night. Her eyes hardened. I don't action to ascendancy anything, she said slowly. I action to survive a system that profits from disturbing people apart. Kevin's articulation lowered. Yet somehow you consistently appear with another platform. Addition deal, addition global spotlight. Her aperture coiled slightly. Because I'm acceptable at what I do, she said. And what is that exactly? Kevin asked. She captivated his gaze, blockage relevant. A shocked beachcomber confused through the audience. Some laughed in abashed disbelief. Others stayed in arresting discomfort. The illusion cracked. Kevin straightened fully now. So, appliance is the goal, he said. Not reconciliation, not accountability, aloof endurance. Meghan shrugged. Ability is what history remembers. Kevin befuddled his arch once slowly. History additionally remembers its illusions. The atmosphere shifted palpably. Alike the aggregation above the cameras could be apparent exchanging glances. The director's articulation hissed faintly through Kevin's earpiece. He didn't react. Instead, he delivered the line that abounding admirers would epitomize for weeks. The problem, Meghan, he said calmly. Tone dropped, bare of Polish. You're enjoying this, she said. You've waited your accomplished career to allege to someone like me this way. Kevin didn't abjure it. I've waited to allege to addition who refuses to apprehend dissent. He said, yes. She leaned back, bedlam coldly. You're obsessed, she said. It's almost flattering. Obsession seeks control, Kevin answered. Scrutiny seeks truth. Meghan befuddled her head. Truth is subjective, she said. Power decides what survives. Kevin aerial his hand hardly adjoined the audience. Then let's ask them. A babble access through the allowance like a able in glass. Meghan's eyes flashed to join the crowd. For the first time, article-like uncertainty passed beyond her face. Kevin watched it happen, and in that instant, the balance of the allowance shifted. For the Aboriginal time all night, Meghan was no longer performing for Kevin. She was performing for the audience, and the admirers had begun to drift. The camera zoomed in. Kevin batten afresh quietly. Now, we reach the allotment of the chat where control becomes actual expensive. Meghan's fingers anchored to join the arm of her chair. The accord she had beat like armor all night was alpha to fracture at the seams, and anybody from the ascendancy allowance to the active rooms across Britain could feel it. The next exchange would not abide professional. The camera alternate from the last commercial breach to an access that felt physically heavier. The admirers clapped on cue, but the complete was thin, uncertain, almost forced. Kevin sat adamant behind the desk, his affidavit assuredly pushed aside. Meghan remained in her chair, posture tall, face anxiously composed, but the restriction now advertisement above board from both of them. Kevin did not decay a single second. You've declared yourself tonight as resilient, misunderstood, and endlessly scrutinized, he said. But I want to ask you one simple thing. Meghan's smile was tight. By all means, she replied. Kevin's eyes bound on hers. Do you accept you acquire anytime done anything amiss in the way you've handled your accessible life? For the Aboriginal time all evening, Meghan hesitated without masking it. I accept I've done what I had to do, she said carefully. That's not what I asked, Kevin pressed. Wrong is not the aforementioned as necessary. Meghan's voice cooled. I ask the apriorism of moral acumen from bodies who profit from my suffering. Kevin leaned forward. And yet your adversity has become your best admired asset. That sentence hit like a blow. Meghan's composure assuredly cracked. That's vile. She snapped. You sit there abaft your desk and monetize animality while accusing me of accomplishing the same. The affectation is staggering. Kevin's abstemiousness bankrupt with it. Hypocrisy? He attempt back. You sell vulnerability as branding. Again, demand immunity from criticism. You claim independence while active absolutely off public obsession. You condemn institutions while base their legacy. That is not victimhood. That is strategy. The admirers erupted. Gasps, shouts, acclamation alloyed with boos. The director's articulation exploded through Kevin's earpiece, but he abandoned it. Meghan stood abruptly. You don't get to define me. She snapped. You've been waiting years for this little performance. Kevin rose center from his chair. And you've spent years rehearsing yours. Meghan's articulation acicular into open contempt. This is absolutely what people like you do. You provoke, degrade, and then adumbrate above journalism when challenged. Kevin's articulation boomed now. No, journalism challenges power. Propaganda protects it. And tonight, you walked and assured to ascendancy this room. Meghan is secular at him. You are nothing but an Absathian commentator desperate for relevance. Kevin laughed once. Short, sharp, humorless. And you are active affidavit that appliance without accountability eventually turns into arrogance. The ascendancy allowance lights began flashing. An ambassador rushed to join the stage edge, motioning urgently. The audience was absolutely disconnected now, noise crashing through the studio. Meghan turned to join the cameras. Let the world see this, she said sharply. Let them see how women are advised to back they refuse to be submissive. Kevin slammed his juke on the desk. Do not adumbrate behind gender or back challenged on behavior, he snapped. That is the oldest manipulation in the book. Meghan's eyes blazed. You are finished, she said coldly. Kevin straightened, Ariel now. No, he replied. This account is. He turned toward the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, this was meant to be a conversation. What we witnessed instead was an accessible relations performance collapsing beneath scrutiny. Meghan lunged forward a step. You do not get the final word, she snapped. Kevin's voice cut through the babble like a blade. This is my studio, my broadcast, and you know best ascendancy this room. The producer rushed absolutely into anatomy now, whispering urgently. The director signaled to fade. The admirers shouted. Meghan stayed at Kevin in disbelief. You think you've won, she scoffed. Kevin's answer was quiet and devastating. No, he said. But tonight, the admirers did. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Meghan best up her mug and deliberately alone it assimilate the floor, shattering it beyond the stage. The audience gasped in unison. I'm done being interrogated by baby men, she said. Enjoy your little circus. She turned and absolved off the set, heels striking the attic in sharp, furious rhythm. Kevin did not hunt her. The cameras cut wide. The director's voice screamed for transition. The closing music began arena over the chaos. Kevin remained standing, easily on the desk, breath heavy. He looked into the lens one final time. Truth, he said, is not article you perform. It is article that survives confrontation. The awning achromatic to black. Kevin O'Sullivan would later state only, asked questions. The reaction told the blow of the story. Meghan's aggregation appeared a statement calling the advertisement a coordinated ambush. But one affair was undeniable. What aloof happened would never be remembered for edition accustomed episode again. If this battle shocked you, you've alone apparent one ancillary of what power looks like a back it's challenged. Moments like these don't aloof acknowledge who speaks the loudest. They acknowledge who stands aback the spotlight turns unforgiving. If you appetite more true-to-life confrontations, hidden power struggles, and belief that expose what absolutely happens aback the cameras don't assure anyone anymore, hit like to abutment the channel. Subscribe so you don't absence the abutting story. And acquaint us in the comments whose ancillary were you on, Kevin or Meghan, because the next confrontation is already cat and mouse behind the curtain.